Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay, I'm down.
Hello and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. We are so excited to be here with you. We have a wonderful show for you tonight. We have two special sections of our show. During the first half, we're going to be talking to the filmmakers and a protagonist of the great documentary Israelism. And then we're going to be talking to Palestinian journalist Said Arikat, who you've seen totally actually speak truth to power during press conferences, during press sessions with the State Department spokesperson, Matthew Miller. And I feel bad for Matthew Miller whenever Said asks him questions. So before we start, though, make sure you like this stream, give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe. That way you don't miss any of these streams. Also, if you can support us on Patreon, that helps. That literally makes the show happen. We couldn't do it without your support. And you can do that at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. We are really grateful for all of you guys tuning in. Again, we made it over the 150,000 subs mark, so we're really excited about that. And it's been really important, I think, to have this community during this atrocious time period. It's been great to have people who are in fellowship, so to speak, around this issue. And so I just want to thank everyone. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our first three guests, and those are the filmmakers of and protagonists of the great film Israelism. Erin Axelman is a queer Jewish filmmaker based out of Massachusetts. They are the co-director and producer of Israelism, which is their directorial debut. Sam Eilertsen is the co-director and director of photography of Israelism. They are the co-founder of Tikkun Olam Productions and the director of the upcoming projects Generation Green New Deal and Versus Goliath. Simone Zimmerman, one of the protagonists of the film, is a progressive Jewish activist originally from Los Angeles. She is a co-founder of If Not Now, the former head of B'Tselem US, and currently works with Diaspora Alliance on issues of anti-Semitism and Palestinian rights. So welcome.
Hey, y'all.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. So I thought so that everyone was on the same page and the audience had some context for this discussion, we could start off by showing a trailer for Israelism.
Say, we came to Israel and we left from Palestine.
The non-Jewish community does not understand our obsession with Israel.
I went to a Jewish day school.
Summer camp, organized trips to Israel.
You want to go to Israel too? Yeah! We want to go! We want to go!
Israeli soldiers, they're hot, they're awesome, they're strong.
We actually have had quite a few of our former students join the IDF. And these are kids, these are 18, 19-year-olds. Amazing.
I told my parents I don't even need to apply to college. I'm gonna just join the Israeli military.
10% of my graduating class joined the Israeli army.
We were deployed to the West Bank.
I don't think I realized the extent to which what I would come to see on the ground would really shock me and horrify me.
When people look at the West Bank today and say, this is an apartheid system, it's not just throwing out a word.
Palestinians live in, day out, without experiencing a day of freedom.
You see what non-democracy looks like.
What we've been told is that the only way that Jews can be safe is if Palestinians are not safe. The more I learned about that, the more I came to see that as a lie.
Within the Jewish community, there's been a striking change.
They're really angry at the way they were indoctrinated, justifiably so.
When we talk about we're losing the kids, we lost them. I think they're a little super naive.
Anytime you cut against the grain, you're going to catch hell.
You are a self-loathing Jew. Go kill yourself. An anti-Semitic Jew.
The way that we talk about anti-Semitism isn't about protecting Jews, it's about protecting Israel. How dangerous is that?
They will do anything to preserve unconditional support for Israel.
The great irony is that there actually is resurgent anti-Semitism.
Jews will not replace us!
History is not going to judge us kindly.
All right. Well, I can say, because I've seen the film, it's great. Tell us what made you want to do the film and how it came about.
Yeah, so I can answer this one quickly, and then it's partly obviously based on Simone's story, and in some ways inspired by Simone too. It's very roughly based off my own story, and very much the story of many of my friends. I didn't grow up in a Jewish day school, but Israel really became the center of my Jewish identity. It really became my way of connecting with Judaism and with my Jewish community, and I became a passionate Zionist and kind of pro-Israel supporter. But then, like many American Jews, came into contact with Palestinian narratives and realized that the stories I kind of followed, I had in many ways fallen in love with, were not the whole story, right? I had kind of missed huge parts of the narrative, primarily the Palestinian experience and the Palestinian narrative. And when I got to college, I saw so many people who, like myself, had grown up kind of unconditionally supportive of Israel, loving Israel, but had virtually no contact with Palestinian narratives, and certainly not Palestinian people. But they eventually did come into contact with Palestinians, and similarly began to learn that the narratives they had kind of been inculcated with were not the full story. And to their credit, began to listen and began to change. So I had the kind of initial idea, and then as we were in the very early production, if not, we kind of became aware of, if not now, and realized that kind of their mobilization and the work they were doing really represented the generational changes we were interested in showing. We heard about Simone very early on. I had friends in college who did work with Simone, and we realized that she was, incredibly inspiring, and that her work really represented a lot of what we were trying to show, and her transformation as well really represented what we were trying to show. So we got in contact with Simone, and that was many years ago at this point. It took us about 7 years, and here we are now.
Great. And what was your aha moment? Did you have one, Erin?
Yeah, it was in high school. I went to a public high school in rural Maine, and I was doing, you could do an independent study in my high school, and I was doing a year-long independent study on whatever you wanted, and the end result was making a short documentary, and I was going to do one on the history of Israel, and obviously it was going to be a very pro-Israel documentary. And my teacher, this amazing kind of progressive hippie guy, either Jewish or Palestinian, at one point, just asked me, just said, do you know anything about Palestinian history? And because the narratives I talked about barely mentioned Palestinians at all, I said, no, I don't know anything about Palestinian history. It wasn't threatening. I just literally didn't know. And so over the course this year, he gave me all of these, history books, primarily left-wing Israelis as well as Palestinians. Edward Said and Rashid Khalidi were really important to me. And kind of the veil was lifted, and I realized that the pro-Israel narrative was in many ways very similar to the pro-American narrative, in that it was this kind of heroic, almost mythical tale of creating a new state, but didn't include the people who lived there before, and totally erased the people whose self-determination was came at the expense of.
And so you were already aware of that being propaganda for the U.S., but not for Israel?
Yes. Yeah, and it was quite shocking. There was a lot of kids in my public high school who went to the American military, and I was kind of like always shocked that they would do that. But I thought going to the Israeli military was a normal and amazing thing. And when I kind of made the connection that they were in many ways quite similar, that was a big aha moment for me.
And what about you, Sam and Simone?
I have like Erin, I didn't grow up with a totally one-sided narrative about Israel and Palestine. I think I mostly grew up with a narrative of like, it's a conflict and both sides have done bad things, and kind of like
complicated.
Both sides, it's complicated type narrative. But Erin and I went to college together, and so we both sort of saw this kind of transformation. Like I have a good friend who when he first came to school, he would like always wear his Israeli military shirt that he like got when he visited an army base in high school. And, now he's very pro-Palestinian, and that was kind of very, very common story among our Jewish peers, and kind of informed making the film.
And Simone?
I guess the beginning of my journey was my freshman year of college. I thought I was going to do Israel advocacy. I joined the AIPAC group at my campus. And over the course of that year, I had like a series of experiences where I ran out of talking points. I kept getting into these arguments. The first time I ever, argued about Israel at school, I remember I got into this like super heated, really detailed conversation about all the issues with a friend of mine, and I was like, yeah, here I go, I'm pulling out the talking points, 1, 2, 3, like I got them. And then I ran out, and that was really awkward because she still had more questions, and I was like, oh my god, I used up all the talking points, I don't know what else. I mean, and, at the time I didn't think of them as talking points, but So it was a series of encounters like that where I was like, why don't I know about this thing? Why don't I know the answer to this question? What is this thing that this person is asking me about? Sounds kind of bad. And, and then like reading there and going back to the community and saying like, what is this thing? Is it so bad that you can't bear to have us see it? And then like the answer is, yeah, it is that bad. And they themselves can't bear to look at it, let alone let us look at it. So,
yeah. We interviewed Gideon Levy on the other show that I host, Useful Idiots. And one of the things he said is like, there are 3 things that need to happen for Israel to be able to live with the occupation. And it's Israelis to be able to live with the occupation, feeling like the chosen people, seeing yourself as victims, and the dehumanization of Palestinians, which obviously you can't really be okay with what Israel is doing if you don't see them, unless you see them as less than human. Talk about what the reaction to the film has been like. I know that a lot of people have canceled screenings.
They've tried to cancel screenings.
Okay, none have been successful. Okay.
Basically, no. It's been very interesting. I mean, obviously after October 7th, a lot of people were in a deeply emotional state, which we were as well. And I think people really wanted to do something and wanted to, fight the very real anti-Semitism. Obviously, that's surging across the world. But people began thinking that our film was anti-Semitic, which is pretty wild, considering that our film was made by an entirely Jewish team and talks very much about the rise of anti-Semitism. But because our film criticizes Israel, some kind of on the far right began labeling our film as anti-Semitic. And then people began thinking, how can I fight anti-Semitism? I can try to cancel the Israelism film without actually watching the film or really knowing what it's about. So a lot of the colleges and theaters we've been doing screenings at have received 10 to 50,000 emails, automated emails telling them to cancel the film and saying that our film is dangerous for Jewish people. It's made by Jews, and the great majority of student groups and professors bringing us to campus or organizing theatrical screenings are Jewish too. So it's very kind of, I think, it really helps kind of clarify the very confused moment that a lot of people are having about what anti-Semitism really is and what's actually threatening versus just what are uncomfortable truths that we have to actually confront. So, but the actual screenings themselves have been remarkably normal. I mean, they've been oftentimes really cathartic spaces for both Jewish and Palestinian students and community members. So the events have been amazing, and interest in our film is really surging. But there's also this kind of quite bizarre campaign to make our film seem dangerous to Jewish people.
Did the screening at Hunter happen yet?
It did.
It did.
Okay, because I know that they were trying to cancel it. Then they were trying to remove can you talk about what happened?
Yeah, Sam, you want to explain?
Sure. So basically the president of Hunter canceled the screening the day that it was going to happen. This was early November, and she sent having not seen the film, she released a public statement that they weren't going to show the film because this is a dangerous time for Jewish students, and sort of implying that, again, that the film was anti-Semitic. And even she mentioned as an example of anti-Semitism like people drawing swastikas on buildings, and so it's sort of like implicitly putting us in the same category as people drawing swastikas on buildings, which is incredibly offensive to us and hurtful. Fortunately, the reaction was that students protested, and the faculty union voted to condemn the decision. The Hunter College Senate voted to condemn the decision, and they did reinstitute the screening. And it happened a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, the president sort of at the last minute excluded the Arabic Studies Department, which is original co-sponsor of the screening, from being able to have their name on it, which we were not happy about. We're hoping that we can do another screening in next semester that includes them.
That's disgusting. Sorry. I mean, I don't mean to put you in an awkward position because maybe you're on good terms now with this president. But
we're not on great terms.
Really shameful and racist.
Yeah.
You're really suggesting that Arabic studies, that's what it is, the department, Arabic studies? Like, you're suggesting that Arabic studies are inherently anti-Semitic. So I say you're a Shonda.
Yeah, I mean, just also on top of that, a lot of the professors in Arabic studies are Jewish.
Yeah. So. Well, that leads into what I want to ask you guys about next, which is, can you explain why you think it's not only dishonest to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, but why you think it's actually dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is that when you do that, you make it impossible. Well, first of all, there's a long history of Jewish anti-Zionism.
Right.
So you're calling Jews anti-Semitic, and also like, I don't know any Palestinians who call themselves Zionists for very good reason. So you're calling all Palestinians anti-Semitic. And then I think the dangerous part is that you are, it becomes very difficult to have a conversation about what actually is anti-Semitism when you're basically just saying that all criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. And so at a time when, again, a lot of Jewish people have faced actual threats, just saying that all criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic, or saying that anyone who identifies as an anti-Zionist is an anti-Semite, actually like really muddies the waters of being able to call out the actual dangerous anti-Semitism that we've seen.
Yeah. Simone, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's so many different components to this. I mean, first of all, the Israeli government claims to be acting in the name of Jewish people around the world. And we see the ways that actually causes blowback abroad. It means that people who are angry at Israel or who hate Israel and or want to express that rage see Jewish people and Jewish institutions all as legitimate targets for that rage. And that is, it's important to like, that's on those people to not be violent bigots. They should deal with their, that's not to like excuse people. Yeah, justify people who act in that way. But it is to say that like, that conflation directly endangers us in these moments when so many of us, are literally out in the streets protesting against what the state is doing. That's why, I was so moved at, this is a line I've taken from Peter Beinart, but he wrote about how groups like If Not Now and Jewish Voice for Peace and Rabbis for Ceasefire being out in the street, showing that we see our safety as bound up in fighting for, freedom and safety and justice for Palestinians, that actually helps fight anti-Semitism, because it's Jews are publicly challenging and breaking that conflation. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of Jewish people around the country showing up at these marches. I mean, I think there was, there's of course all these incredibly disingenuous, people who will say, just outright smear all Palestine marches as anti-Semitic. And it just strikes me as just it's so frustrating, because I think it's fair to say that probably in every single city in which Jews live and there are Palestine marches, there are probably Jews at those marches. No. We are in this movement. We see the freedom for Palestinians as it's not just like, we see the injustices that are happening, and we're outraged on a human level, but also as Jews, we do feel a responsibility to be in this movement, also for like our own liberation as well. And so I think just like the erasure, of the diversity of perspectives in our community, and what safety means for us. And then, and that's not to just get into the whole other side, which is like, it actually makes it harder to understand real anti-Semitism, to take it on. The Anti-Defamation League regularly lumps anti-Israel incidents in with anti-Semitic incidents. How do we even, how can we even have data, have information about the real, material reality of anti-Semitism, where it's coming from, what the phenomenon is, when it's constantly being mixed up with a Palestinian student waving a flag on campus or whatever.
Right. And it makes it a lot easier for people to dismiss it. I'm so used to not taking allegations of anti-Semitism seriously, because so often they're just someone criticizing Israel. So it's going to be a lot harder when there are actual incidents of anti-Semitism. And as the film shows, anti-Semitism is not non-existent. In fact, it's dangerous, which is why it needs to be isolated from anti-Zionism. But of course, it gets all it dilutes and trivializes anti-Semitism when people are presenting it as anti-Zionism. And of course, the other reason that I think it's dangerous is because it presents Jews as this monolith who are all loyal to Israel, which is ironically, a very old anti-Semitic trope. that you have perpetuated by the ADL and AIPAC and Israel.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, when we're talking about like the foreign relations strategy of the state of Israel, we now see anti-Semitic politicians and groups and leaders around the world who like will literally use endorsing the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is the Israeli government's preferred definition that conflates anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. They will endorse that IHRA definition, and then they get the hector from, you know, Bibi Netanyahu, and therefore, you know, they're good on anti-Semitism when these people, you know, can be leaders who engage in Holocaust denial or revisionism, who stoke anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in their own countries. I mean, we see the way that this conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is also like a core part of this authoritarian right-wing movement around the world that uses this false claims of caring about Jewish people as a kind of cover for these broader bigoted movements. I mean, the House hearing with the college presidents was also like a textbook example of that, right?
Yeah.
That was not about keeping Jewish students safe. That was about rolling out a right-wing agenda to attack universities and public education.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, again, you have to, you know, like Republican politicians leading those things who have done openly anti-Semitic things, right? So it's just deeply ironic that, again, when they support Israel, it kind of cleans their hands of the real anti-Semitism that they often perpetuate.
Like she supported, she puts out replacement theory, right? That's
Exactly.
like at least
Exactly.
ironic.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Also, John Hagee's another example, right? He's that pastor, megachurch pastor, who spoke at the recent pro-Israel rally in D.C., and he famously had to be dropped by John McCain, but not by the Zionists apparently, because he had said that Hitler was sent as a hunter by God.
No, it's deeply, deeply disturbing that, again, you know, and again, Christian Zionism, a lot of the kind of basic theories of Christian Zionism are incredibly anti-Semitic, but a lot of Christian Zionists are accepted within the community because they support Israel, even though they believe totally ridiculous and very dangerous stereotypes and beliefs about Jews.
Yeah, I think the Jews who are fine with it are just like, well, we don't believe that. That's crazy. There's not going to be rapture. So fine, let them have their bad beliefs, but they're still useful political allies.
Yeah.
Which just speaks to how, you know, transactional all of this is.
And how sad it all is.
So sad. And also just the, you know, the idea of Jewish safety, that what I'm not surprised that people who are, you know, that Netanyahu is very Islamophobic. I'm not surprised about that, but it's just so funny when they're actually anti-Semitic, because that's like the one thing they had one job, these people, right? They're supposed to care about Jews. Like, I would say they're genocidal in their caring about Jews, but the irony is that they don't actually care about Jews. They care about Zionism as a political project.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, they've been doing this for years. I mean, you know, after the Tree of Life synagogue massacre, I mean, Israeli government officials immediately kicked into gear, inciting against Palestinians when a white nationalist had just come in and massacred Jewish people, like for, you know, being in solidarity with refugees and all these other ideas of like actual, like for holding liberal values. And they immediately did not even address that. They went right into, I mean, Naftali Bennett literally said the same hand that shoots synagogue goers is the same hand that shoots rockets, like immediately deflected it back into this, you know, anti-Palestinian
so disgusting. Agenda. Both sides in anti-Semitism, pretending that people who are critical of Israel and feel solidarity with Palestinians are the same as white nationalists who literally kill Jews.
I think it's worse than both sidesing. I think it's actually whitewashing in favor of their other agenda.
Yeah, it is whitewashing, white pride washing. Yeah. How did you guys get interviews with people like Abe Foxman of the president emeritus of the ADL, of the Anti-Defamation League?
Yeah, I mean, we actually did about 80 interviews for the film. So we filmed, you know, the film, it took us almost 7 years, it was 6.5 years from our first interview to our world premiere at Big Sky Documentary Film Festival in February. And we interviewed a lot of folks. So, you know, the great majority of folks we did not include in the film. We interviewed lots of folks on the center and the right. And so with Abe Foxman, we just emailed him. We just said, hey, you know, we're two young Jewish filmmakers. We're making a film on the American-Jewish relationship to Israel. Would you be interested? These are a bunch of the folks we've interviewed. And he said, yes. And we sent him all the questions in advance. As you saw in the film, we talk a lot about the conflict conflict. We talk a lot about divisions within the American Jewish community. So it was about what the film is about. And then he signed his release form after he'd done the interview, fully aware of what he said, and every single person signed their release form after they had done their interviews. Abe Foxman has attacked us a bunch, which is fine.
Said that we're fake news.
Yeah, he said we're fake news. He said that we were anti-American Jewish, even though we are American Jews, which was confusing. But also, again, he actually went on JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, attacking our film, and admitted he'd only watched 10 minutes of the film.
Probably his own
sections. Sent him. I'm not sure. I mean, we sent him the film, when it came out. So again, and there's this long pattern that we've had of people again attacking our film without actually watching it or being willing to actually engage with what it's about. But we interviewed people from all across the political spectrum. And Abe Foxman has a right, he can be mad at us if he wants, but he talks with a lot of people. Abe Foxman is a public figure who has done interviews with many, many, many journalists, and we were just one. So he can be as upset as he likes.
Right. I mean, he must like attention because he learned the hard way about documentary films. There's this amazing film called Defamation, where a Jewish Israeli filmmaker goes and exposes the ADL, and the ADL is 100% open with him because I think they assume that a Jewish Israeli filmmaker is going to make a pro ADL film, and he just savages them. So
wow, I actually didn't know about
that.
That movie's a classic.
Yeah, it's great.
I've heard it's great. Actually, I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's really good. Really good.
Yeah, so he must be a glutton. He must just be an attention, like the attention.
I mean, we have these figures who are self-appointed spokespeople of the community who, I feel like he probably never misses an opportunity to give an interview like that. So I think he's just upset that it so happens to be that it's a political view that he disagrees with. But the story with me, him attacking me when I worked for the Sanders campaign, he just has claimed that mantle as that was what he did is he's the person who says you're kosher, you're not kosher.
Right.
So,
yeah. So, will you tell us about what happened with you and Bernie Sanders?
Sure. I was hired to work for the Sanders campaign in 2016 as the Jewish outreach coordinator. And 3 days into the campaign, 2 days, I don't remember. It's a long time ago. A journalist saw me at an event, Googled me, realized that it was interesting that the Sanders campaign had hired someone like me. At the time, they were hiring lots of young people from activist groups. And within 48 hours of him writing an article about me, that he wrote another piece saying, Simone Zimmerman wrote, "Ready for this?" I wrote, "Fuck you, Netanyahu," on my Facebook page.
Can't believe it. Fire.
Nobody wants to say "fuck you, Netanyahu." Here's my moment to say it again. Fuck you, Netanyahu. That was my offense. There was a whole campaign. Abe Foxman, Ron Lauder, Malcolm Hoenlein all gave statements to the New York Times. Also other kind of older male figures of the Jewish establishment saying that I should be fired. And I was suspended. And then the campaign was winding down and I was fired with everyone else. So,
Did you talk to Bernie about it?
No.
Interesting.
But I think they were just trying to make the story go away because he had to debate Hillary that night. And, Ben said on the debate stage, there comes a time when you have to say Netanyahu is not always right all the time. So, I feel like in spirit, he was echoing, "Fuck you, Netanyahu."
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, again, Abe Foxman basically saying, Simone was dangerous for saying F you to Netanyahu, whereas Foxman gave Trump the kosher stamp for years, right? It took him almost 4 years to say that Trump was racist. Over and over again, he was asked.
Interviewed him to say he was racist.
Over and over again, he was asked, "Is Trump racist?" Just basic, not even anti-Semitic, just racist. And Trump is so obviously racist, and he couldn't get himself to say it. He led one of the quote unquote largest civil rights orgs in America. It's like you're supposed to be an expert on civil rights, and you can't say Trump is racist, yet you say Simone is dangerous.
It was his first public statement after he retired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's very symbolic because it's like he did not want there to be, younger spokespeople in the community who have different views than he does.
He wouldn't attack Trump, but he attacked Simone. I mean, that just shows how bizarre the priorities of kind of the quote unquote American Jewish establishment are. And it's just deeply sad because, again, you have people who are real dangers to minorities, including Jews, and then they attack our own community just for being progressive. It's deeply tragic.
Yeah. And that continues to be what the ADL does. I mean, they regularly go attack activists and Palestinians and people who are less powerful than them, while, you know, Elon Musk wants to ban Palestinians from Twitter right after saying very anti-Semitic things. Sure, all good.
Right, and Musk attacks, like, had this whole very white nationalisty attack on the ADL, and yet the ADL is willing to cozy up to him once he says he's going to ban Palestinians.
Yeah, the ADL, I mean, they're just about Israel. There's nothing about anti-Semitism. That does not motivate them. They just care about what you say about Israel. And they also, again, talk about muddy the waters. They declared Jewish Voice for Peace a hate group. So when they talk about like hate crimes, or they talk about anti-Semitic acts, that is probably includes a Jewish Voice for Peace nonviolent vigil.
It could, yeah.
Yeah, and it's sad. I mean, you know, and again, they were criticizing Elon Musk a little bit initially, you know, for his obvious white nationalism and conspiracy theories. But then he began attacking them, and then began embracing Israel, and they've stopped their attacks. I mean, it seems it's quite sad.
Well, they liked it when he said that you couldn't say from the river to the sea.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because
and again,
it's
and our
genocide, according to anti-Palestinians. Yeah.
And our film explores that phenomenon, right, of real anti-Semites like Elon Musk. Then again, because they then support Israel, it kind of forgives them. When we finished, you know, editing the film almost 2 years ago, there was a lot of examples of that, but not a ridiculous amount. In the past 2 years, the number of examples of that phenomenon, it is truly wild. I mean, and if we could make the film again, there'd be so much more material to really talk about that incredibly disturbing and tragic phenomenon.
Like what? What examples would you put in?
I mean, there's so many things with Elon Musk. I mean, RFK was the same thing, right? He says something overt, like just truly bonkers anti-Semitic, basically saying that Jewish and Chinese people like designed COVID, right? Essentially implying that. And then, right, the next day says, but I'm not anti-Semitic because I support Israel, and a bunch of pro-Israel leaders embrace him. So it's that exact same phenomenon of people actually doing anti-Semitic things, but because they then support Israel, many members of our community essentially forgiving them and giving them a pass.
Right. Well, you've been so generous with your time. Before you go, though, I want to ask Simone, what can you tell people as someone who used to be brainwashed? What are the talking points? What's the hasbara, which means propaganda? Well, it means explaining, apparently, in Hebrew, but it really is shorthand for propaganda. What are the strongest like lines that you got growing up, or talking points?
Wait, the ones that I still think are any good?
No. Like, what do they tell you? Like, what are the things that Zionists will tell you to say? Like, you talk about how you ran out of talking points. So what were some of those talking points? So people know what the script is.
I mean, I kind of think that if you follow American politics or watch mainstream TV, you get the talking points.
Jews have the right to defend themselves. Israel has the right to defend themselves.
Yeah, I mean, everything is. I mean, in some ways, I think the talking points are almost less interesting than like what the talking points are all designed to like not see Palestinians, not see Palestinian humanity, not see Palestinian reality, not have to actually engage with like the existence of Palestinian people at all. So very quickly, if you actually if that becomes within the frame in any like real serious way, it's very hard to respond to. So, and I think that's kind of like what made it all fall apart for me, because these aren't talking points that really like engage with if they do engage in the reality, it's like, well, there must be a reason why we killed them, or they must have done something, right? There's a lot of like language that like criminalizes Palestinians and dehumanizes them.
All right. Well, any final last words that you guys want to share?
Well, thank you so much for having us on. And also, there's been some people in the comments. If you want to watch Israelism, you can watch it worldwide right now. If you go to Israelismfilm.com, anybody in the world can rent it right now and kind of see the film that's about our story and Simone's story.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Great. Bye. Alrighty, don't go anywhere. Let's see. I hope people are liking the stream. Where are we at likes? Brad, can you tell us where we're at in likes? I think he's going to text me the answer, because we got a lot of people watching, which is great. It's not a short show. That's our first half. Now we have another guest. All right. Can someone tell me the likes? 700. Oh, not bad. We should get to 1,000. I'll wait. Guys, let's get to 900. 900. Smash the like. I don't want to have to train you guys. This is so that we can get people to come to the stream. That's what this does. Okay, where are we at now? Because you're gonna want to like this, because our next guest is amazing. Brad, you should just come on and tell us. No, he's gonna text me. 700.
We are at 828.
Oh, come on, let's get to 900, guys. I'm gonna read you Saeed's interview in bio, and then
Katie, you're like the parent that's like, I will turn this car around.
I will turn this car around. I will turn this live stream around. Yeah, come on, guys. This is so easy. This is to make sure that people come watch the show. That's it. It's not bragging. It's just it's math. It's a numbers game.
It's science. Yeah.
It's science. Yeah. All right. Well,
and that was a wonderful panel as well, and really excited to hear.
Yeah,
from
of course,
Said
it deserves a like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to bring on Said Arikat. I'm so excited to have him on because I watch him frequently. He is a Palestinian journalist and Washington bureau chief of Al-Quds, a daily newspaper which has been published out of East Jerusalem uninterruptedly since 1951. In addition to his work as a journalist, Arikat is an adjunct professor at the American University. He served as the United Nations chief spokesman in Iraq from 2005 to 2010. He's a familiar face at U.S. State Department press briefings, where he's engaged in sometimes contentious exchanges with State Department spokespersons. So, without further ado, Said Arikat. Hi.
Thank you. Hello there, Katie. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yes.
I'm honored.
Well, I have so many questions for you. Let's see. Maybe we'll start with one of those contentious exchanges that we referred to in the introduction. Brad, we have two clips. Do you see the other clip that I have of Said, or if not, we can just play the. Okay, so let's start with the one that I believe comes from today. It's about journalism. So we're going to play that, and then I'm going to ask you about that, and also about your background and biography.
Right.
Okay. Well, why don't you start out telling us actually about your background? How did you become the journalist that you are today?
Well, that's a very interesting story because, my real background, I'm an industrial designer. So, I went to the same program from which Steven Spielberg dropped out. I always say that. So, that's my background. Then, I came basically to do some political work on behalf of the Palestinian community in America. We had a small group, and I was elected. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, in Abu Dis, which is right outside of Jerusalem. It's the place that was designated to be the Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem. Anyway, so I came to go to college in San Francisco, which I did. And, it's the rest is history. I came in the 80s to do some work on, behalf of our community. And then the war in Lebanon happened. And I went there. I went just to see what was going on. And then I met my wife. So that was in 1982. She was a physician during the siege of Beirut. So, and I came back to Washington and started doing journalism ever since. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And tell us about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, sorry. Keep going.
No, I'm just saying that's basically it. In short. Yeah.
Well, tell us about your family, where they're from, where they had to move, if they were able to stay where they're from. What was their journey?
Well, my family is from the West Bank, from Abu Dis. We are, part of East Jerusalem. It's really where the wall goes highest. My parents, my brothers came to this country to go to college and stayed and got married and had their kids and so on. My parents, both died in Abu Dis, so that's, yeah. So I still have lots of family in the Jerusalem area and in Jericho. one of the chief negotiators was my cousin Said Arikat. He was well known. He passed away 3 years ago, and his so it was our family was actually going back and forth between the Bay Area and Jerusalem, and Jericho. So this they have done this. The Arikats have done this for a long time, even before 1948. So, but my family still is in that area in Upper East. My extended family, my first cousins, and so on, and in Jericho. So that's my connection to the land.
And what's life like for them there?
It's horrible, especially now. I mean, in fact, my brother and I still own our home there, and constantly it's being, transgressed by nearby settlers and by the Israeli army. They come to the village, they arrest people. They went in a couple of weeks ago and they killed 3 people in my village. So it's a daily thing. There is a checkpoint right at the entrance of the village that separates, I guess, the Gethsemane, where it is, where Bethany is, where Bethany is. Okay, well, it's right at the junction between Upper East and Bethany. There is a checkpoint from which everybody has to go through or not go through.
Right.
On one side, and on the other side, it's going to Bethlehem. So there's a great deal of, especially with the checkpoint. A couple of years ago, on June 24th, 2020, a young cousin of mine was on his way to pick up his mother from a hair salon, of all places, and he got shot dead at the checkpoint, and they still hold his body. I mean, these are some of the things that people endure on a daily basis. His parents still can't have closure because they cannot bury him.
And what is that? Why does Israel do that? Is that just part of their dehumanization? Do they have an alleged reason for doing that, for not releasing the bodies?
They never say why. There's about 800 dead Palestinians that they hold. Some have died in prison, but a lot of them were killed at the checkpoints or in what Israel claims to be confrontations and so on. I don't really know. I mean, it's an amazing thing that you hang on to a dead person. I don't know. Perhaps for future negotiations or something, trade. I don't know. It's terrible. It's kind of macabre,
And in Islam, I think I don't remember in Judaism and Islam when you're supposed to bury it's supposed to be shortly after the death, right?
Immediately after the death. What they do, they wash and it's the same thing in Judaism. So it's you bury the dead. You have like the prayer over them and so on. Then you bury them, and then you begin whatever rituals that you have. And it is really quite disturbing for families not to be able to bury their sons, their parents, their whoever, because of, in this case, because of political kind of enforcement.
So disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
It's sadistic.
It is awful.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah. So let's take a look at one of your contentious exchanges with Matt Miller. Let's start with one that is about babies and incubators.
Right.
Fine.
On this issue, there's a great many rumors and so on that talks about incentivizing Egypt to take like hundreds of thousands and so on. So you repudiate that completely. That is not something that has been discussed, as it was allegedly discussed on Capitol Hill.
So I am not going to respond to rumors, and I don't know what you're referring to with respect to Capitol Hill, but it doesn't actually really matter. But I will reiterate the principles that the Secretary outlined, and one of them is no forced displacement of the Palestinian people from Gaza.
Okay, a couple of other issues. There was a report that Israel's assault forced a nurse to leave babies behind. They were found decomposing. Are you aware of the story?
I am aware of that report,
okay.
Said.
And do you take it as it happened, or if it did happen, is that a war crime?
Said, I would say that is a tragedy.
Okay.
It's a tragedy for those babies.
Right.
It's a tragedy for their family members.
Right.
It's a tragedy for the Palestinian people, and it is a tragedy for the world.
Okay.
And it is why we have made clear that far too many Palestinians have been killed in this conflict, and that, of course, includes far too many Palestinian children and, of course, Palestinian babies. And it is why we have taken every measure we could to speak loudly and clearly to the government of Israel that it needs to do everything it can to minimize civilian harm. And it's why we have worked to try and move humanitarian assistance in. And it is also why I will say we have said that Hamas should stop hiding its fighters in hospitals.
I'm talking about this particular incident.
I know. It gets to the very difficult nature of this war,
right?
And the immense human tragedy that has been inflicted on far too many people.
But if it happened, it's not a war crime, or is it a war crime?
So I'm never going to be able to make an assessment here. You saw us today make a conclusion about war crimes after a very deliberate fact-finding process where we then apply the fact.
That's part one. There's more. Trigger warning. There's more of this guy.
It's not something I can do responding to a report. Just please let me finish my answers before you interrupt. I will take all of your questions.
Sure.
It is not something I can do responding to a report from the podium.
Okay, I understand. But would the U.S. consider sending a fact-finding mission like you did?
We are in the middle of a conflict right now, an ongoing conflict. We monitor all of these reports, but I'm not going to speak to what actions we might take when we're still in the middle of major combat operations.
And lastly, my last question. On Monday, when I asked you about, where should the Palestinians go, and you said there are designated UN centers to go to. Well, apparently the spokesperson for the United Nations, Stefan Dujarric, whom you know, repudiated that yesterday, or refuted that. He said, let's be clear, there are no UN designated safe zones in Gaza. I think all my senior colleagues have been very clear, including the Secretary General, saying there are no safe places in Gaza. There are shelters that fly the UN flag that are sheltering thousands and thousands and thousands of people, men, women, and children who are trying to stay alive and get some food, get some water. We have seen since the beginning of this conflict that those places that fly the UN flag have not been safe either. You comment on that?
So I will say, first of all, I did not say that there were safe zones. That is a very different concept. Said, again, can we just establish a ground rule that I won't interrupt you and you won't interrupt me? I did not say that there were safe zones. That is a different concept. We have seen earlier in this conflict the idea of safe zones, and what instead we have moved to, what we have supported, are areas that are deconfliction sites, and there are sites that are UN flagged facilities that Israel is aware where those sites are. Israel has placed them on deconfliction lists, and Israel is not supposed to target those sites. That is what I was referring to. We continue to support people moving to those sites where they can be safe from harm. But again, we recognize the very difficult situation on the ground and the very difficult choices that many Palestinian civilians are having to make every day.
Wow. I mean, what non-answers?
Exactly. I mean, you would think that pulling the plug or forcing people away, a nurse in this case, from where babies are in incubators and so on, is a very clear war crime. That's what it is. I mean, and they refuse, of course, to say. They would never say anything, Katie, that would lift the cover that they have extended to Israel. It's called, this Israeli exceptionalism that they give Israel. Well, they did that with Shireen Abu Akleh, if you recall, back in May of 2022. They came out and the journalist, U.S. citizen, American citizen journalist, who was killed, and then their finding was in July of that year, or July 2022, that the Israelis did not have the intention to kill her. So it was an Israeli bullet, as they put it at the time. It was an Israeli soldier that pulled the trigger, but they did not have intention to kill the journalist. So there's always the caveat. Right.
That was after they released a video, right? The Israeli government released a video of a shooting that was not of Shireen Abu Akleh. They claimed the shooter had been shooting her. And then Axelman came forward and was like, no, that's impossible.
Right.
And then they finally admit it. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only Axelman, but actually other institutions like CNN, New York Times, the Washington Post, everybody did their own investigation. and they concluded it was the Israelis that shot her. So we see this all the time. I mean, we see it with the bombing. The government, this administration, not from any form, would say anything that is incriminating to the conduct of the Israelis. So we've come to get used to that. It's very frustrating, but I still have to ask the question because I have to do my reporting, and I need to raise these issues.
I'm surprised that they call on you, though. Is it just too embarrassing not to?
Well, I mean, I ask my questions professionally, and I ask them straightforwardly. I depend on, what's out there in the news. I mean, it's. I understand that the spokesperson does have the power to call on anyone or not call on anyone. I mean, that's their prerogative. I hope that they continue to call on me. I've been going to the State Department for many, many, many years. Then it goes back to the George W. Bush administration. So even before then. So yeah, I hope that they continue to call, because if they don't, then you are not allowing the proper space to talk about these issues that America is so involved in. I mean, this is not some place or some country that is not involved directly in this conflict. The United States is directly involved in this conflict, has always been directly involved in this conflict. It keeps this current war going. I mean, the U.S. and the U.S. taxpayer supplies Israel with the weapons, the cover, the political cover of the UN and the general and the UN Security Council, as we saw a couple of weeks ago when the U.S. cast a veto that called for a ceasefire. We have sort of some theatrics going on this evening where everybody's trying to scramble so they can satisfy U.S. language, so they can pass some sort of a resolution calling for humanitarian aid to go into Gaza. So the U.S. is fundamentally involved, and not to call on a Palestinian journalist, there would not be very wise.
It would just be bad PR.
For whatever reason, I mean, I must admit that, and I never really take it for granted. They have always, the spokespeople in one administration after the other have always called on me repeatedly, and repeatedly, and I'm allowed enough space to express my questions and express my thoughts. I mean, sometimes the spokesperson gets either frustrated or upset with my questioning and says, don't interrupt me, do this, not do that. But that's about it. I mean, we are quite amicable with one another.
I mean, it is shocking, though. I mean, even though you asked that question, one would think, I mean, it's shocking, but it's not shocking. It's totally predictable. It's disgusting, though, that the story about babies being left to decompose. I mean, they made up stories about Saddam Hussein pulling babies from incubators that weren't true, because they assumed that would infuriate and disturb people. And then in this case, it actually happens and they don't cover it.
Exactly. That's a great point that you raised. That was back in 1990. I remember it so well. And in fact, they brought someone to testify, and she turned out to be the daughter of the ambassador, the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington. So yes, absolutely, I concur. That is exactly what happened. When it comes to the Palestinian, look, there is something almost in any area on human rights, on right to defend oneself, and all these things. It's okay, except for the Palestinians. I mean, this is the kind of message that is constantly being conveyed.
Right. And another thing that you brought up recently, we're going to look at this now, is are you clicking a pen?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It'll just, we want it. Just for the sake of the podcast.
Yeah.
Who was doing that the other day? It's a sign that you're doing that. Someone else is doing that.
It's something that I do all the time.
Yeah, I know.
I'm glad you brought my attention.
Doing that, and I was like, don't do that. We're going to take a look at your in exchange with Matt Miller, I believe today, about Israel's all-out war on journalism.
That was yesterday, yes.
Oh, yesterday. Okay, so this is from yesterday.
Right. A lot of journalists have been killed, maybe 90 and so on. Do you have any doubt that that Israel intentionally targets journalists?
So we have not seen evidence that Israel, let me, usual rule, let me finish. We have not seen any evidence that Israel is intentionally targeting journalists. Obviously, we have seen dozens of journalists die as a result of this conflict. Saw one, Samer Abu Daqqa from Al Jazeera, who was just killed in recent days. And as we have said before, we mourn every journalist who has given their life in covering this conflict and bringing information to the American public and to people all around the world. We think the work that the free press does is critical to a democracy, especially in conflict zones where, unfortunately, far too many do pay this sacrifice, and our condolences go out to all of their families. And there are cases where, when we have seen actions that we thought warranted, we have raised questions with the Israeli government and sought more information. You saw us do that with respect to the Reuters journalist who was killed in Lebanon. And we will continue to do so, and we will continue to encourage Israel to comply with their own rules of engagement and comply with international humanitarian law. And if we ever see signs that they are not, we will of course be very clear about that with them.
Go
ahead. Last one, Saeed, because there are a lot of other people.
You mentioned Samer Abu Daqqa. I mean, he was bleeding there for like 6 hours, and they sent in a crew to retrieve him. They were all shot dead. So they knew exactly where he was and what he was bleeding right there. People are trying to reach and retrieve him, and the Israeli army disallowed them from doing that. So wouldn't that be intentional?
So again, as always, it's very difficult for me to comment from specific facts here. We're in an extremely challenging information space when you see different accounts about activities on the ground. But as I said, we continue to be clear with Israel that they must comply with all international humanitarian law. Go ahead.
Follow up on the journalists.
So, okay, that journalist who was just killed, as you pointed out, was shot. So he was targeted in the first place. But let's say that it was accidental, just for argument's sake. Like, it's not the truth, but I'm just going to make an argument. Then they don't let medical aid come to him, and they shoot and kill a paramedic who tries to reach him. Three. Okay, 3. So you can't, there's like no plausible deniability there.
There is no plausible deniability whatsoever, none. Samer Abu Daqqa, first of all, he was accompanying the correspondent, Wael Dahdouh. Wael Dahdouh's family in October was killed by an Israeli bomb, his whole family. So it's the same correspondent was out there covering. To his credit, he went out covering what was going on, and his cameraman and sometime producer, Samer Abu Daqqa, was out there with him, and they both got hit. And while was injured, he was able to walk back or roll back, whatever it was the situation. And Samer remained, and they wouldn't allow the crew to get to him. But this, Katie, happens time and again. I mean, that's how 90 plus Palestinian journalists have been killed in this conflict. Now, I know that the United States of America, Secretary Blinken, constantly, talks about the death of journalists and the Ukraine war, which should be condemned, obviously, for obvious reason. But, they don't even mention that there are 90 Palestinian journalists that have been killed. They say the journalists in the Middle East. Journalists in the Middle East. I mean, this is such a, it's a non-kind of definitive kind of answer or place. You need to say, we will not allow Israel to continue killing journalists on purpose, because they know where every journalist lives. You see, what people don't understand, there's something called COGAT, which is the coordinator for the territories. The coordinator for the territories in Gaza registers, records every birth and every death. They know exactly where every person lives. They know every place that they hit a bomb with, because Israel depends on AI a great deal, and its targeting and all these things. So when they kill a journalist, and especially in their sleep, when they hit their homes, They know exactly who they are. They know exactly what they do. They know exactly that when they were born, what they do, where they went to school, what kind of kids they have, whether they're married or not. They know all these details. Because that is the job of the coordinator. And in fact, was one of the most contentious issues when the United States was trying to issue the visa waiver, if you recall, back in August and September, because COGAT had some restrictive questionnaire that they wanted to ask Palestinian Americans and so on. And the U.S., was a bit, annoyed with Israel's enforcement of this. So they know exactly who was where when. So they know exactly all of that. So to say that they have done it without intention to do it is nonsense.
It's so disgusting. It's like every time that I think Israel couldn't do anything worse, they do it. And every time I think like, okay, now Israel's defenders are going to be critical. They have to, because it's just too gruesome to deny someone medical aid while they're bleeding out. But they do it. And then somehow it's, but Hamas, or, well, he must have been a terrorist, or I'm trying to think of the other things that they say. But those provide a lot of leeway for these people.
Well, I tell you what, Israel has always done that, Katie. If you go back to 1967, I think there's, until this war, there was something like 70, 75 Palestinian drones that have been killed by Israel. So this is not something new. Israel disallows ambulances and first aid vehicles from moving from point A to point all the time. I had a relative of mine, she had a heart attack. There was an ambulance to take her. They held her at the checkpoint, and they will not let them through to the hospital, the Al-Maqasid hospital in East Jerusalem, until she died. I mean, and then they said, you can go. I mean, that's exactly what they do. It's really, it is very brutal. And, you used the word sadistic when we started this conversation, and that's exactly what it is. So they do that all the time. They target journalists, they target medical workers. Already this war claimed maybe 200 medical workers, including doctors and nurses and medical care givers and all that. So they know perfectly well. They destroyed schools, they destroyed mosques, they killed 2 women in a church the other day. The last remaining church in Gaza, they destroyed one. This is the second, the last remaining church in Gaza, and it's a very small Christian community. They target them, they killed a woman and her daughter. So Israel does all that on purpose. Nobody can deny this.
And I mean, the targeting of journalists and the targeting of medical professionals. The other day, medical professionals held a press conference and they opened fire on them during the press conference.
Yes, absolutely, all the time. Now, if you do any kind of organization, you'll be targeted. And it's not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. This happens time and time again. People in Hebron, many peace activists. If you go to Hebron, they will disallow you from walking the streets. The police and the army will not allow you to talk to people. Will not allow you to conduct interviews. Will not allow you to go. If there are certain areas where Palestinians are not allowed to go through the roads and sections and so on in the city itself. So this happens all the time. This is Israel's policy. I think Simone said it best when she was talking about the ADL and so on. Their purpose, of course, they focus on Israel, but also to leave the Palestinians out of the conversation, not to talk about the humanity of the Palestinians. They don't exist. And we heard all kinds of statements by the defense minister, Gallant, by other people that spoke of people in Gaza as not being human or human animals or all that. So that is that where it all begins. I mean, this is the kind of basic concept that Israelis treat the Palestinians with.
Do you take it personally? Like, as a person who you belong to this group that is dehumanized, are you able to separate it?
Absolutely. I mean, I am an old coot, so I've been around the block a few times. I hold it, but I'm a human being also. I mean, when I see, I get on all these programs late night, for instance, the Arabic television programs and so on. And they show these scenes of babies dead and toddlers. I have a 2-year-old grandson, and
Greg?
Greg, exactly.
From your Twitter
Greg,
bio, yeah.
Yes, Greg. My daughter met her husband in law school and so on, and he's Jewish, and so my grandson is I see. I understand how these families feel about their kids and their children, and just to see how they die in the hundreds. It's easy. It's amazing. It's mind-boggling. How could the world take such a thing? I mean, we know how we feel about our kids and grandkids. So they feel the same way. These are parents, and these kids. They if they survive without their parents, or without their grandparents, or without the extended family. It is really heartbreaking. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, of course, I feel it every day. But then I need to go on. I need to ask the question. I need to write my report, and I need to raise the issues.
Yeah. It's just so I can't get over how it's just like this is it's just murderous, and we're seeing it, and we see the babies, like you're saying. I don't understand how these people sleep at night. Although, Rafat Al-Arir said during a stream, not with me, but someone else, he was saying, well, that implies they have a conscience, which they don't. But that's another example of targeting. Like, we know that Rafat Al-Arir, they targeted his sister's apartment. So they didn't bomb the entire apartment building. They just bombed the apartment because they knew he was there.
Yes. And in fact, his last tweet said honestly that this may be my last tweet.
Yeah.
So it's you're absolutely right.
So we have another clip I want to show you because it's just interesting to see how Israeli politicians and PR people do their job. So this is, let's see, who do we have here? Deputy Mayor of, hold on one second. Okay, here we go. So here is the deputy mayor of occupied Jerusalem and founder of the UAE Israel Business Council, Fleur Hassan Nahum, talking on a British show about the shooting and killing of a woman and her daughter in a church in Gaza. Let's hear what she has to say.
If a ceasefire means the return of the hostages and the dismantlement of a genocidal regime that has stated that they're going to attack us again, then everybody would be in favor of a ceasefire. But if a ceasefire means that we're just going to keep them quiet for a bit until they attack again, then it's Israel's obligation to defend its citizens and destroy that threat, don't you think?
Why is it necessary, it is reported, to start shooting, having snipers outside a church?
I saw the reports this morning. The church, there are no churches in Gaza, so I'm not quite sure where the report is talking about.
There's a Catholic church in there, isn't there? That is.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are no Christians because they were driven out by.
Well, respectfully, there are Christians because I spoke to an MP yesterday who has family members in the church who are Christians.
Well, I don't know what happened. I don't know who was attacked. I didn't see the report.
So she says she saw the report. Then she says she didn't see the report.
Right,
she
exactly.
says there are no churches. Then there are actually no Christians. And then she actually, so then let's take a look at her tweet because she obviously was being called out on this. So she tweeted, this was her excuse that she tweeted out because it was just such a bad explanation. She tweeted, oh, she blocked me, so I can't show it. Brad, do you have it? Oh, there it is. Okay, you screenshot. Okay, great. Let's see that again. Okay, I've received a number of comments on this, so I want to clear things up. I said there are no churches in Gaza, but what I meant to say and afterwards said is that there are almost no Christians in Gaza. No, you didn't say almost Christians. You said you didn't say almost no Christians. You said there are no Christians in Gaza. We're talking a few hundred in a population of over 2 million. And the reason for that is simple. Gaza has been ruled by the Muslim Brotherhood for nearly 2 decades and have systematically, ethnically cleansed its Christians. That should bother anyone who cares about preserving and protecting the Christians of this land as I do. Okay, so the way you're protecting these Christians is by shooting them.
Exactly. I mean, that is so vintage Israeli doublespeak, isn't it? I mean, yeah. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that really no one would, no good analyst, no serious analyst would take, in any kind of credible, any credibility whatsoever. So my response to what she's saying, that whether it's Christians or Muslims, you should not kill innocent people in any place of worship, in any place, period. You should not target men, women, and their kid, their daughter, whatever, because you feel that they are a threat to you. Right. Even if in fact they were taking shelter in this place, it doesn't matter what this place is, whether it's a church or a mosque or a synagogue or school or anywhere, or a home, for crying out loud. I mean, the Israelis just went into Jenin the other day. They destroyed a home. They tied people and they put things around their eyes and so on. And they do all kinds of awful things. And then they sat around smoking, water pipe and all this thing. And they really said, "Oh, we will investigate." Israel has been investigating their transgressions, or the soldiers' transgressions, forever, and they have never ever come with any conclusion. I mean, it's probably the only time it happened when they burned the 4-year-old alive, and now I think he or the perpetrator may be out of prison. I don't know. So it's Israel does not have a good record of investigating itself. It is an issue that I raised many times in the State Department briefing when they say that Israel investigate itself, but they never conclude. Or if they conclude, they say that it's a slap on the wrist. So I think we can go and look at all the cases where Israel found its soldiers guilty, and they were fined maybe like $5 or $10 or something similar to that.
And what was the you just referred to the burning of the 4-year-old baby?
Right, Dept. This sometime back in 2016. I can't remember all the details, but when the settlers burned the whole family, and they killed a 4-year-old, and they or 2, I think, and then the Israelis went arrested them, and they were tried. One was convicted. He spent time in prison, and I think most recently, either he was released or was being released, and so on. So the point that I'm trying to make, Katie, is that Israel does not have a good track record of investigating what they do. They claim to, and they come after the fact. As you mentioned with Shirin Abu Akleh, the first thing they said was she was the victim of a Palestinian terrorist shot at her and killed her. Then they said she was caught in the crossfire. Then they said, okay, no, we did it, but we had no intention of doing so, and so on. So that's how every time, that's how the story evolves. The same thing when they bombed and the Baptist hospital in Gaza on October 17. The same thing when they said, the Shifa hospital, they kept saying it's a headquarter for Hamas, and then they showed us some silly calendar that had the rotation of the doctors, who's going to be when, and so on. Then we had no less than the former Israeli Prime Minister himself, Ehud Barak, come out on Christiane Amanpour show and tell her, we built this bunker. So it's always the same thing. I mean, Israel knows exactly what it's doing in Gaza. They probably think that this is the best way to make Gaza uninhabitable and to drive the people out, whether Egypt wants to take them or not now, or they say they want to take them or not. Ultimately, people cannot live in a place where it is uninhabitable. And that's what they're turning Gaza into. I mean, this is the stark reality. They're trying to drive the Palestinians out. This is a continuation of the Nakba of 1948. There are no two ways about it. And they do this, totally empowered by the United States of America.
Did you know any of these journalists personally?
Yes, of course. Of course, I know them. I know, you'll be surprised. Some of them were trained. They would come to the United Nations, that they would bring someone like me to speak to them and so on. We have done this in the past, many, over the years and so on. So yes, of course. I mean, let's say there was a correspondent of Hatab of the Palestine TV. I mean, they bring me on and they bring him on because he would be in Gaza and he would tell us what's going on, and they would ask me to comment on U.S. policy night after night. Then, one day he was bombed and killed. So I can go on, with many examples like this. So the journalist community is not that large. I mean, most of us know each other or have known each other or have been on the same programs with one another without knowing each other, So in one way or another, you have some sort of a connection with these journalists.
And the only reason that they talked, I think, about Shireen Abu Akleh in the first place was because she was Palestinian American. I think if she was just Palestinian, it wouldn't have made American news.
Well, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, it's the person that was shot with Shireen is my colleague in my newspaper. So he was shot like, I think maybe 6 times, but he was hit first. I know how snipers work. I mean, I have I came to understand that when I was in Iraq for 5 years. I knew how the sniping happened. Apparently, there's a sniper and there's a spotter. There's the guy that pulls the trigger and there's a spotter. And they say, okay, well, the bullet has something, there's the wind factor or the air factor, whatever, they do it. I don't know much about ballistics, but that's what they do. So basically, they shot him for distance to see how they are going to hit her. And they hit him in the shoulder. He fell, then they hit her. So, it is not only intentional, but premeditated.
Did he survive?
Yes, he did. He survived. Okay. He was recently also wounded, went to the hospital and survived. He's an amazing guy. He's got 9 lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus. That's the other thing that's so heartbreaking is that you see these kids rescued from the rubble. You see kids rescuing their dogs from the rubble. You see a doctor with a baby, and you can't even breathe a sigh of relief because they could be killed the next day.
Yes, they are. I was reading a disheartening story about a young girl. I think she was 4. She lost her legs, and then I think a couple of days ago she was hit and killed. So
yeah,
I mean, this happens over and over again. Remember, Katie, at least 20,000 people have died. We don't know how many,
right?
Because there are thousands under the rubble. We don't know, and we don't know how many will die of their wounds because there's something like 50,000 wounded, and some of these wounds without any medical care because the last hospital ceased to provide services. So the Israelis, are making sure that the hospitals don't function because they don't want services given. They don't want people to survive. They want to force people out. This is the intention all along, despite what the administration says. I mean, you heard me ask Matthew Miller about that. So and he said we are committed to the non-movement of Palestinians, the forcible movement of Palestinians. But in fact, despite what the administration thinks, the Israelis want the Palestinians out of Gaza.
So you've been doing this for a while, as you said. Is
Yes.
there any difference among the presidents in terms of their position? Like, is Biden worse than Obama was on Israel? Are they all the same?
Well, under Obama, if you recall, we had a major war in 2014. It was just as intense. It was not near as bad. Only 2,400 Palestinian civilians were killed at the time, in a short period. They all paid lip service to two-state solutions and so on. I must say that, Biden is very enthusiastic about his support to Israel. And, he always comes out and, wears his... the fact that he's a Zionist. I mean, he calls himself a Zionist like a badge of honor. He does that time and time again. And we understand your love for Israel, but you can't go day after day conveying a false narrative, an Israeli narrative about the decapitation of babies or other stories and so on. You do it verbatim, even when your advisors tell you, please don't do that. Even when the Israelis called the Americans, says, hey, tone it down, on the
Right.
issue of
Yeah.
the rape and all this, tone it down, because, there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of exaggeration in that. So
Like Matthew
yeah.
Miller saying that the reason Hamas wasn't releasing these other
Right.
hostages was because the women were probably sexually assaulted and they
Right,
didn't want them
right.
to talk about
Yeah,
it.
and one of my colleagues asked the following day, she said, you said that, but I mean, ultimately they will be released and they will be saying the same thing. So their story, it doesn't, the logic is a bit quirky, it doesn't work. But to answer your question, I think we have seen consistently American presidents take the same stand and see Israel expand settlements, do away with agreements, I remember when George W. Bush called Ariel Sharon a man of peace, a guy whose own biography, he wrote his autobiography and he called himself warrior. This is the guy that called himself warrior. Bush insisted that he was a man of peace. We know that Obama reiterated the same mantra about Israel's right to defend itself. And this right to defend itself means that Israel has every right to do whatever it wants because it is not being held accountable. The same thing with Biden. The same thing with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, if you recall, during the Camp David, I don't know if you recall, but during the Camp David talks in the summer of 2000, when they disagreed with Arafat and all these things, they promised, I will come out and will give a press conference, but I will not put the blame on you, because it was not Arafat to blame. It was actually Barak to blame. And sure enough, Bill Clinton came out and blamed the Palestinians, blamed Yasser Arafat, blamed the PLO, the PLO. So invariably they do that. They have done this. To his credit, Ronald Reagan, during the siege of Beirut, when he called Menachem Begin and he said, cut this stuff out. When the bombing was so bad and so intense on civilian areas, he told them to cut it out, and they cut it out because America wields a great deal of influence. I mean, this is in this partnership, the United States of America is the senior partner.
Apparently, he called it a Holocaust, Reagan.
He did, actually.
Yeah.
He did call it that. Yes.
And what are your thoughts on Netanyahu's recent admission that he killed the peace process, as he told some journalists the other day?
Right. He's always taken pride with that. We knew that all along. I mean, Netanyahu, if you recall, in 1995 and 1994 was really instigating against Rabin. And in fact, Leah Rabin accused him of being behind the assassination of Rabin. So, Netanyahu has been consistent. I mean, since 1996, let's say, when he assumed the premiership the first time, until today, he has consistently did everything possible to nullify the two-state solution, to make it unachievable by whatever means. And they all know that. And Obama knew this, Biden knows this. When Biden went there for the first time in 2009, Katie, Netanyahu greeted them with this expansion of settlements, if you recall. And, he was very upset, Biden, but, they couldn't do anything about it and so on. And then, a few years later, Netanyahu, working with the right-wing GOP representatives, came in and spoke to a joint session of Congress, instigating and inciting against the Obama-Iran deal, if you recall, for the nuclear deal and so on. So they have done this time and time and time again. Netanyahu is probably the major obstacle before any process of peace anywhere in the region.
What are your thoughts on what's happening, what Yemen is doing? Let's say there are checkpoints between Mexico and the U.S., but it's not a good parallel for other reasons, which we can get into.
Right.
And I'm not whitewashing the way the United States treats Mexico, but it is not a good parallel because it's not one country. It's not one apartheid state. Said, any last words that you want to share? Because you've been so generous with your time and you're so knowledgeable about so many things.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to being on with you again.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope that everybody works to, so we can have a ceasefire. That's the first priority, because that's the only way to really stop killing the Palestinians. So, to stop the death and the destruction, first things first. Let's have a ceasefire.
Thank you. Agree. Amen. Thank you so much, Said. And definitely we would love to have you back. And the audience loves you.
Anytime. Thank you.
That was great, guys. Wow. And thanks for sitting through that Bill Maher. And that was such an honor to talk to Said, and people loved him. So that's great. I'm sorry to everyone for making you watch that. Bill Maher, Brad, I think you probably have some PTSD right now. Brad, you want to come on and say anything?
No.
Are you ever going to talk to me again?
No.
You're going to sue me?
Yeah.
For labor abuse?
No, I think Said said it all, you know. It just bothers me because, like you had mentioned, Katie, I just know that there's a non-zero amount of people that listen to people like Bill Maher and just internalize that and regurgitate that out as their worldview. And you know, I think that it's people like Said, and to a small extent us and many others, that hopefully offer some sort of a tonic or an antidote to that, but doesn't make it any less frustrating.
Yeah. And it just, I just don't get how people don't want a ceasefire, no matter what they think about like how this is going to look ultimately. Right. I don't see how people can see these babies and old people. And of course, you know, you can just be a man, like a Palestinian man who doesn't deserve to die either. Right. But like, you know, let's be realists too. Like, people are seeing a babies die is something that's incredibly viscerally challenging. And
I just wanted to actually just mention, I'd mentioned this earlier. This is one example. You were talking about journalists.
And that's the guy, that's the journalist who was with Samer, who was shot and let to bleed out.
And he, in this current genocide and ethnic cleansing, has lost his wife and his children. Right. And Israel shot him a few days ago. And while he was laying there, they also killed his cameraman.
That's the one who was bleeding out over the course of 6 hours. Yeah.
And he survived. And he literally, from his hospital bed, was saying he expects to be out reporting the next day.
Yeah, but it's just so scary. It's like every day, you know.
I just think, like, and then they make like Taylor Swift Person of the Year or something like that. I mean, these people are hero encouraged. It just doesn't even cover what these people are.
And it's just that's so terrible because, like I said earlier, you can't even, like, when someone survives, like, you can't get your hopes up because they could survive one day and then the next day they're killed. Right. I mean, it's just, and there's that little girl who's a journalist. And I mean, I can't, like, I can't.
She interviewed him a few days ago too.
She's so cute.
It's so cute at the same time, it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's totally. Just, you can't even watch it without thinking that she could be lose her life, lose a leg, lose a parent, lose all of her family, be as, you know, as they call it, WCNSF, wounded child, no surviving family. I mean, it is just, this is, everyone who's speaking out against this, really, you're doing the right thing. And people are going to look back and ask what they were doing at this time. So do whatever you can do. Sign petitions, go to protests, challenge people, watch Abby Martin's documentary, Gaza Fights for Freedom. And I say that because it really gives you a lot of good, I think, useful talking points. Mm-hmm. Check out people like Noura Arikat, who's related to Said, by the way. It's the same last name. It's just transliterated differently.
Oh.
Follow Said's work, read Rashid Khalidi's book, who Erin mentioned in the earlier part of the show as one of his inspirations.
And speaking of books too, just to let everyone know, I believe
The 100 Years War in Palestine. That's the book I recommend.
If you go online and just search Haymarket Books, that's a bookstore that is currently giving away e-books, or, you know, electronic copies of a handful of important Palestinian books for free. So anyone that wants to read more about Palestine, that would be a great thing to check out.
Yes. Also, someone put in watch Useful Idiots. It's true. Do watch my other show, Useful Idiots, because the cool thing about Useful Idiots is that it's a daytime. We tape during the day, so we can have on people who are actually in Palestine. And in fact, this week we're talking to a journalist, someone who's with the Palestinian Press Syndicate. So we're going to talk all about journalism with him. We've had on Gideon Levy, who's based in Israel. We've had on Ilan Pappé, whose book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine in 10 Minutes on Israel, is really great.
And isn't his book the one that the French publishers now are not
the French
anymore?
publisher is not publishing it. It's disgusting. I mean, it's so embarrassing. Be
crazy.
subtle about it. It's just censorship. So yeah, please do check out that show, and we're going to continue to have on people from Palestine. We had Rafat Al-Arir on that show.
Yeah.
We had Rafat Al-Arir. We had him on with Yumna Patel, who I was able to have on here because she's here now. She's usually based in the West Bank, but she's here. And then also we had on Mohammed Shahada. And then what happened is after Rafat died, we did a special bonus episode that's on Useful Idiots and here also. In fact, I have to post a video here, but we posted it as a podcast where I talked to Mohammed Shahada and Youssef Al-Jamal, and both of them are his students. But what was so heartbreaking was that Mohammed Shahada did the interview. You'll see he's like walking around, and it's because he was in Egypt because his grandmother, Mohammed is based in Sweden, but his grandmother was able to leave Gaza because he's from Gaza. And his family was afraid that the grandmother would die. So he flew from Sweden to be able to see his grandmother and maybe say goodbye to her because now she's in Egypt. And he said she looked so different and her skin was yellow and it's just, yeah. But, and we're going to keep, and I'm going to do some pre-taped interviews so that we can interview people in Palestine so that we bring you that. But, we also will bring you Palestinians based here, like Noura, Said, we brought you Susan Abu Hawa, Ali Abu Nima, and next Miko Peled, yeah. And next week we are Brad and Tyler are taking off, but I'm going to be doing a year in review episode with historian Sam Biagetti.
Well, this would be part 2.
Yeah.
Yes, the second anniversary. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And so we're going to be talking about Zionism and the history of Zionism, as well as it's going to be basically like different moments of the year, like 2023. I'm trying to figure out the way to phrase it. It's like the 5 historic moments of 2023, basically 5 things that happened in 2023 that historical background will help you understand.
Gotcha.
It doesn't really roll off the tongue. You can't.
You have to workshop that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like labor history related to, UAW stuff. Then we're going to talk about Zionism related to October 7th stuff.
Right. Because a lot of these things, like some of the most important things that we talk about, at least I feel like some of this stuff is so deep that it's almost like it might benefit to have some sort of primer, prior to the interviews, because some of this stuff, whether it's like labor history or the history of Zionism and stuff like that, it's a lot of information to try and condense into, running. Yeah.
Yes. And we're going to talk about the roots of Zionism and the Ottoman Empire. It's going to be great.
And Sam's a great person to speak to.
Yeah. Maybe talk about the multipolar order.
We'll see where the night takes you.
Yeah, we'll see where the night. Maybe some Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be great. And I want to thank. Let's see. Will that be the last? Is this the last time that I'm with you, Brad, this year? Because then it'll be the second.
Yeah, it's been swell, Katie.
But the swelling's gone down. Brad likes to say that. Yeah. Tyler, are you there too? Tyler, if you're around, come on camera so everyone can say goodbye to you. I didn't give Tyler a heads up, so he may be. Oh, there he is. Okay, great. Tyler, come on. Come on down. Hi, Tyler. You're muted.
You're muted.
Hey, everybody.
Tyler, how's it going?
It's going good. Winding the year down. Had a nice dentist appointment today at 2:30, so it was perfectly punny, and all good to go.
Nice. All right. Well, Tyler, you have to start giving us what age group are you? Like, what's your?
I was born in 97.
So
I'm
you're a what?
26. So.
But what you're not? What's after a millennial?
Gen X or Gen Y?
No. Gen Z, I think.
Yeah.
Gen Z. Yeah.
One of the chromosomes. Yeah.
All right. So you got to start giving us reports.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to get a TikTok. I'll download a TikTok just to get Gen Z reports going.
Well, and I'm sure you already saw this poll, Katie, but recently, I can't remember where it was from, but polling generationally regarding views on what Israel is doing to Palestinians, and the split was just stark amongst age demographics. And you go down to Gen Z, and by a very large margin, they approved of just returning the land to Palestinians, and which is like the polar opposite, like, virtually all baby boomers are like Bill Maher. So
yeah, it's weird. Sometimes you think you're living in a bubble about, or like an echo chamber about your views. And then sometimes you feel like there really is a zeitgeist shift going on.
Yeah, there is. There is. We just need it to translate into policy.
Right.
But one of the things Ilan Pappé said once when I heard him speaking, he was just like, Israel's just like every other issue where the political elites are out of step with the mainstream, like Medicare for all, Israel. And it's like Israel's exceptional in the way the U.S. makes it exceptional, like our guests were talking about earlier. But we also have to remember that we're often elites are usually out of step with us.
Right. And in discussion, it's such a topic that you're trained to, kind of walk on glass about, and you're not sure got what idea about it.
Right.
And that's just, further propaganda working.
So it's not polite discussion. So we're not bringing up genocide because we don't want to offend people.
Right.
Well, that makes me think of too what it seems to me at least, in the mainstream media, the way that they speak about these things, oftentimes, like, there are exceptions, but the vast majority of the time, they like to use language and frame things in a way to kind of just say things matter-of-factly, like, this is just how it is, and I think that by framing it to people as expected, as like a matter of course, then people don't lose their, freak out about it or whatever, like, as long as it's all part of what's to be expected. But if they were to, what I would argue, appropriately comment on some of this stuff, like, hair on fire, like, are you seeing this? Like, holy shit, which would be appropriate, people would freak out. But I think a lot of people get kind of lulled because they're like, well, if the person on the TV is not freaking out, then this must be normal.
By the way, I like this idea. Roberta Price, perhaps the title 5 events in 2023 and the history behind these events. Maybe. What about the history behind 2023?
2023 and me.
We didn't start the fire. Part 2023.
We didn't start the fire 2023. Yeah. Well. Anyway, thank you, Brad and Tyler, and
thank you,
and
Katie and
Phantomus Fanta. I want to thank you. He's not around because I think there was a power outage where he is.
Oh no!
But we want to thank him, but maybe he can stop by next week.
And thank you to everyone that's here, commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing.
Thanks for getting us to 150K.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah. It's a community effort. None of this could be done without all of you.
Literally. And even if you can only do the $1 a month Patreon, that's really helpful. So we thank everyone who does that. And we got a new member this episode. So thank you. I mean, this thing, and let me read the super chats. Thank you, Imad Abisale, for your super sticker. I'll find out how you can watch it.
I made sure I was gonna put this on screen, but at the end of the interview, they made mention of where people can find it. Yeah.
Thanks, Wadeworth. Always so generous. Thank you, Sprinkle. What currency is that? Not sure.
Offhand, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Well, either way, we thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert Pukere. Happy holidays, Katie, Brad, and everyone. This show and audience has been unwavering in remembering humanity. Thousands of families and kids are praying for the suffering to end. I'm thankful to all working to answer them. Thank you. That's so nice, Robert. Executor.
I believe that's a peso from Cuba.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's
Wow.
what the internet says.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Wouldn't that be nice if the sanctions against that country and the blockade were lifted?
It could also be a peso from the Philippines. I'm sorry to.
Okay.
They're very similar. Anyway, continue the super chat.
I have nothing. Yeah. Thank you for the Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. Oops. Sparky, make Israel Syria again. In those Ottoman Empire days, Jews and Arabs got along fine. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Jews and Muslims. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great work, Katie. Thanks, Sparky. Contrasted with the MSM selective outrage over the death of Jamal Khashoggi, it looks very hypocritical. 100%, Jay Savage. Yes. My mother worked for D's, I guess Democrats. Yeah. I voted for them for years. No more. They lied to us too. I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden just because he's not Trump or whoever is the R nominee. October 7th woke me up. And thank you for being a new member, Laura Crowley.
Thank you, Laura.
I've studied all this every day since 10/7. It's clear Israel is an apartheid state. Israel caused this. I'm pissed that the D's lied to me all these years. So what power do I have? My vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it makes, just real quickly on that, and I'm sure other people have seen it, and if necessary, we can show it at some point, but that reminds me of that, I think it was 2006, 2004, 2006 Lawrence O'Donnell clip, where he just candidly was honest and said, unless you show them that you are willing to not vote for them, they're not going to change.
They don't need the left, they said. Yeah.
And just anecdotally on that too, the first ever presidential election I was eligible to vote in was Hillary and Trump.
Oh man, holy cow.
And I was like, that was just the last time I'm ever gonna compromise my values for a vote, because look where that turned out. I mean, that's obviously representative of a larger systematic idea, but yeah.
Oh, whoops. This will cost Biden the White House. Speaking of what you were just saying, Tyler, this will cost Biden the White House. Good. Maybe then D's will stand for Palestinians and the oppressed. Maybe then they'll stand for human rights instead of standing for what keeps them in power. Ronald Reagan was able to order Menachem Begin to knock it off in 1982, but that was before Israel owned almost all of the U.S. Congress. I think some Americans were killed also in the bombing, which is significant.
And this is just my own opinion, but if I were to hypothesize, let's say hypothetically, let's say Biden lost, and because people were like, that's, cross the line, I can't do it. My guess is it's not like they're going to come out the next day and be like, oh, we're changing. And actually they're going to spend a good amount of time blaming the left and then fundraising off of fear mongering. It's going to take a hot minute for them to be like, okay, fine.
Yeah. Thanks, dried brain freeze. Palestine area was part of Syria under the Ottoman Empire. It's misleading to treat it as if it was always just the present area. Bill Maher is politically incorrect. The laughter sounded forced or fake on Bill Maher. Yeah.
I thought so too.
Katie and crew, you've been invaluable resource during Al-Aqsa flood. Thank you. Free Palestine. Thank you.
Yeah, that means
a lot. Please try to get Amer Zar on. Okay, let me write that down. Cool. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I will try to do that. I think we follow each other on Twitter. No. Yeah, no. I don't think he follows me. Nope. I may have to get verified so I can message people. I was verified before when you didn't have to pay for it.
Actually, I was thinking about this, Katie. I think that it would be a good thing for us maybe during the next show or something. We should do a poll for viewers, like what they think.
Yeah.
Do they think that you should not pay the whatever $5 to get a blue check on Twitter and continue to not do that, or do they would they
Yeah.
think, yeah, you should do that? Yeah, but no. See, my
right.
my position is a principled one. Like, I'm not in favor of giving Elon Musk any money and supporting him in any way. Plus, like, that was something that he took away that was given out for free, and I don't think anyone should give him anything for it.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a good thing to poll the viewers on.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll find out what you guys think. Someone wrote, do what you need to benefit the show. Yeah. Well, guys, this has been great. Thank you all so much for coming. And I will see you next week, but I want to make sure I would love to have on Motaz. But and Ottoman Empire sent ships to rescue Jews from the Spanish Inquisition 1492. That's be an interesting chapter of history.
I'm sure Sam will be able to tell you about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Well, guys, I will see you next week because I love you so much. I'm not taking off a week of the holidays. All right. Bye, everyone.
Oh, Louis Villains for Better Government. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Louis. All right. Bye, everyone. You're going to play the song out, Brad? By the way, Brad made that song. We've told you that.
And yes, everyone that is giving me grief about it, I will do my best to come up with a new rendition for the new year so that it has a different sound clip or something. So anyway.